So, the concept of free will, that we are humans and we have the power and the ability to decide our own future and shape our own destinies, this concept has been ingrained in our brains for a very long time. Our teachers, our parents, everybody who cares about us has told us in some point of time in our lives that we indeed shape our own destiny. But how much of it is actually true, we never might know, because some people, they say that they shape their own destiny. Why? Because they worked hard, and they worked a lot hard for the goals they want to achieve, and in the end they did achieve. But what you see on the internet or what you see out in the world are the stories of successful people. There are a lot of people whose own lives have not been successful, but it does not mean that they did not put sincere and valiant efforts trying to achieve their goal. So, in the end, we all meet our destiny, and successful people say that it was not our destiny, we tried and we achieved it. Unsuccessful people will say that we tried, we did not achieve it because it was our destiny, that we are not going to be successful. So, do we actually have the power of free will? Is this an illusion that we are free to do whatever we want, or whatever we are doing right now? It is already pre-written and it is already pre-decided, and we are just going along the course. Some of these questions can never be answered. Very interesting topic to think about, but I don't know what to say to that in that specific regards. That the illusion of choice exists or free will exists or not, we would never know. But today, I'm not here to talk about free will in general. Today, I'm here to talk about the fate and tragedy of Spider Man. Now, Tobey Maguire's Spider Man, which we have seen, he attained powers by being bitten by a radioactive spider, and he received super strength, the ability to make webs and stuff like that. And he used that ability to gain money, to achieve his own personal goals. And we all know, if you have seen the movie, that Uncle Ben died, and he thinks he's kind of responsible for that. And the tragedy of Spider-Man is that no matter which iteration you're talking about, be it Andrew or Toby or Peter or this one, the PS4 game one, they all have experienced tragedy. So the destiny of Spider-Man, so it is kind of true, it is kind of like the holy grail of Spider-Man, that they have to actually experience loss, that no matter what is their beginning, they are always going to experience loss. Toby experienced loss of Uncle Ben, and he also lost Harry in Spider-Man 3. So this is emphasized in the first Spider-Man movie when Peter said that no matter what I do, the people I love will always be the one who pay. And in the end, when MJ confesses her love to Peter, he walks away from that. Why? Because he thinks that he has to serve a greater purpose than himself, and it would be a responsible action to move away from MJ so he could fulfill the promise he made to Uncle Ben of that with great power comes great responsibility, and he's going to live up to that. So, if you follow the subsequent films, we see that in Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3, there were some up and downs between MJ and Peter, but in the end, they did work it out. Even in the latest movie, No Way Home, he says that it's kind of complicated, but we made it work out because, as I said, in the first movie, he willingly walked away from MJ because he thought it would be a good thing to do. And in turn, fate thought that the decision made by Peter was a very strong one, and they rewarded Peter by they rewarded him that he can happily live with MJ. Sure, problems will exist, of course, in like every relationship, but yes, he will get to live with MJ. Now we are talking about Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and we saw that Andrew never really struggled like Peter in the comics, or like um, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man when getting the girl. He was like a little bit, much not little bit. I think he was much more cooler than Toby's Peter. Because he never really struggled, and the things kind of worked out for him. But the father of Gwen Stacy, when the day he died in the first Amazing Spider-Man film, he actually asked Peter that he is always gonna have enemies. So he wanted Peter to stay away from his daughter, and that's like a very logical thing a father would ask to protect his children. But we see that Andrew did not walk away from Gwen Stacy. We see that in Amazing Spider-Man 2, she unfortunately died, and that guilt consumed him. He probably experienced one of the most darkest days in his life. So, when Tobey Maguire's Peter walked away from MJ, the fates decided to reward him for his strong decision. But in Andrew's Spider-Man, when he decided to stick with Gwen, the fates think he did not made the right decision, and he lost her as well. So you can kind of say that you should not try to fight with your destiny. Is it trying to say that? We will never know. The concept of destiny and free will, we will never know. But tragedy always seems to find Peter Parker in some way or another. I mean, that's what we experienced in the game which I just showed you. I mean, Aunt May, she unfortunately died. Why? Because if Peter used the formula to save her life, then other people of New York could not have been saved. I mean, Peter made every responsible decision in the game, but still tragedy occurred to him. He lost Uncle Ben, and now he lost Aunt May as well. Not only that, he also lost his mentor because he idolized Dr. R. Octavius. He worshipped his ideas, his relentless optimism for the betterment of humanity. He was heartbroken on so many levels, but still that is why we love Spider-Man, because no matter what happens, how many heartbreaks he suffers or how many personal tragedies he suffers from, he always gets back up and he always fight to protect the good people of New York. Now, talking about Tom Holland's Spider-Man, in the MCU one, what would you say about him? I mean, there is no place for Uncle Ben in that universe. He's not mentioned, he's not referred much in the MCU as far as I can remember. There's hardly any talk about Uncle Ben. So there's no influence of Uncle Ben. It's like a different take or interpretation of what Spider Man is. In the MCU version, he was helped by Tony, a rich guy. He gave him his suit to fight in Civil War. He also gave him the Iron Spider suit, which is indeed a very cool design. So things kind of seemed to work out for Peter. He did not have that same basic problem of experiencing loss. He did not experience the loss of Uncle Ben like the way Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield did. Things kind of worked out for him. He got Tony. Tony became his father figure. But then in Endgame, Tony died too. Tragedy occurred to him once again, and well, Tony was actually related to a lot of people. He was related to Happy and Cap and Thor and a lot of people. Uncle Ben and Toby and Andrew, he was only related to his nephew, you know. So yeah, Tony. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay the tragedy of Tony Stark's death, but uh, I'm I'm saying that it is not as the same personal level as Uncle Ben. So things kind of work out for him, and uh, MJ, Zendaya, Michelle Jones or whatever, she also kind of seemed to like Peter too. So things worked out for Holland Spider-Man pretty easily. But then we see in No Way Home that Aunt May, he lost her as well, and the guilt that he was responsible for her death it was pretty evident when he was sitting on the roof of that place, where he just come out to get away from things. And we see that that was the moment where we saw the becoming of the true Spider-Man we know and love. So after all that events, Toby and Andrew, uh, they kind of explained to him that we experienced loss and killing is not gonna bring you satisfaction or peace of mind. In Spider-Man 3, Rosemary Harris, who plays Aunt May, she says that Uncle Ben meant the world to us, but he would not want us to live in revenge for a second because it's like a poison. It could consume us and it could turn us into something ugly. And that specific role, which Aunt May played in the role of Peter in Spider-Man 3, to basically try to replicate that same level of authority on Holland Spider-Man, that killing Goblin, you're just gonna become like him. It's not gonna bring you peace. And then in the end, Peter, the Holland Spider-Man, he decides to make a very difficult, hard, gut-wrenching decision that everyone will forget him, and including Ned and MJ. So it was kind of a reboot, if you want to put it that way. A very hard, a very strong decision taken by Peter. And in the end, what we saw, that he's living in a shitty apartment. We saw the reference to the rent being due, and he was now, making his own suit. And he did not tell MJ about his true love. I mean, he kind of walked away because he knew that as long as Ned and MJ are gonna know Peter, Spider-Man, their lives are gonna be dangerous. So he makes the Spider-Man that the most difficult choice of not telling them the truth of what happened. He just becomes the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man we know and see. And the fact that he has the memory of his past life and nobody else remembers, that is a scary thought. I would not know how would deal with that. I mean, I would be deeply into an existential crisis. But that is Spider-Man, the man who always suffered through tragedy, heartbreak, losses, but he still gets back up. He still tries to fight for the people. He receives resistance from all the places, but that is the spirit of Spider-Man. That is why he is considered the greatest superhero of all time. Spider-Man is just not a character, it's a mantle, it's a designation that if you want to do good, you have to make sacrifices. I kind of wonder that if we had people like Peter in the world, that we could see beyond the concept of race and stuff like that. These lines which we have artificially created to divide us. Maybe if we could just function like normal human beings. I'm not trying to say I'm perfect, but uh, I have I have made mistakes in my past too. But with characters like Spider-Man and Peter, we can we can at least try to at least attempt to be like him, if not exactly like him. That no matter how many problems we face, Spider-Man always gets back up. It was a very amazing dialogue in the game, in the Spider-Man PS4 game, when he was told that he should not go out and fight the villains when they were on loose. Uh, he was told that there are 14 broken bones in his bodies, and Peter replies that this means he has 192 bones still left in his body that are working, something along those lines. But the fact that he did not care for his injuries, and he still wanted to protect the city as it was falling down at the hands of the Sinister Six, that is Spider-Man. That is the tragedy of Peter Parker. That no matter which actor portrays him, Spider-Man is always going to experience tragedy. That is why I love him, and that is why millions of people love Spider-Man. I mean, there's a degree where we can relate ourselves to him. We struggle in our lives to a lot of in a lot of aspects, and so does Peter. That's why I think Spider-Man is the greatest superhero of all time, and the tragedy and the fate of Spider-Man, it can never be changed. From what I understood from the movies, that the sooner you accept your responsibilities, the fates are going to reward you more. Toby accepted in the first movie. He kind of have a better life because Aunt May was alive and he still got to live with MJ. Andrew did not accept the responsibility. He did not decided to walk away from Gwen, and as a result, she died. He still has Aunt May. I'm glad, but Tom Holland, he was given so much at his hand, and yet he was the one that experienced the most loss. Tony, Uncle Ben, Aunt May, and now MJ and Ned, all of them, you know. I mean, they're not dead, of course. MJ and Ned are not dead, but Aunt May and Tony's, they are dead. There's no happy, that there's nobody that can support Peter in Holland Spider-Man now. Nobody. He's all alone. So maybe sooner we claim and face our responsibilities, the kinder the fates would be to us. I think that is the lesson we can learn from here. That with great power comes great responsibility, and the sooner we accept it, I think the better it would be for us and the people we love and know. I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean, if you have any certain outlook on free will and tragedy in the fate of Spider-Man, please let me know. I think it was great talking to you, and I love reading comments. If you are watching this, I would love that if you leave a comment, a kind of constructive analysis. I love having conversations with people. So, have a nice day, and I'll see you later. Bye.